All right, everybody has been admitted.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Casey.
Okay.
All right, I am calling to order this evening of Tuesday, May 12th at 6:03 p.m. the Finance Subcommittee regular meeting. All right. Roll call. I think I have everybody, Casey, correct?
Yep.
Anybody else? It's hard for me to see the people on the
I
list.
don't see that Erin is on yet.
Okay, you let me know and I will, I'm assuming she'll hop on any moment, so.
Okay.
I will fix that at the end if she doesn't.
Okay.
Okay. Quick question. Is there anybody recording our meeting this evening?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Morash. All right, hopping right to it. Is there any public comment this evening?
I do.
Fantastic. Go right ahead.
Okay. Let me set up my stopwatch so I don't overstay my welcome.
Never, Mark.
Yeah, but still. Hey, don't say that. I'll keep talking. We all want to go other places tonight. Mark Morash, 25 Mist Hill Drive, Brookfield. A few items and ideas. First, as we approach the referendum, thank you all for your work and effort in getting us to this point. May the budget pass on Saturday, and may we look forward to easier budget sessions in the future. In that regard, I'm wondering if for those of us who are scoring at home, if you could add the line item numbers to each of the entries in the monthly payment register. For those of us who are trying to understand budget season better, being able to attach each of these monthly items to the information we receive in the budget packets each year would help immensely. To be able to, throughout the year, build and understand the buckets and allow deep line item level understanding of how the money is spent. Second, I'm asking the Finance Subcommittee, as I plan on asking each committee, that they provide the public with the same documents that are going to the committee members so our public comment can actually be informed. Not days or weeks later in the meeting agenda of the full board, but when the committee members receive them. As Attorney Mark Samaruga discusses in his book, Understanding Connecticut's Freedom of Information Act, he talks about the Connecticut Superior Court case, Zoning Board of Appeals of the Town of Plainfield versus the FOIA Commission. The court observed that one purpose of a meeting agenda, quote, is that the public and interested parties be apprised of matters to be taken up at the meeting in order to properly prepare and be present to express their views, end quote. Imagine if I could speak specifically to BHS Boiler's financial impact in a properly prepared manner. Maybe you have imagined it, don't like what you see. I'm joking. While not specifically a finance subcommittee issue, the point is valid. During the facilities committee meeting last month on May 4th, discussion occurred of the drip grant and the boilers. It would have been wonderful to be able to know ahead of time and be able to ask questions and be a part of the discussion and conversation. And then less than 48 hours later, the item was voted on by the board, end of story. Another option would be, although less welcoming, the idea of putting a second public comment section back in at the end of the meeting, like the full board used to do and should bring back, so the public has the opportunity to comment on what was just heard. It should come as no surprise that I'm asking for a greater level of welcoming from the board to the public. My hope is that we get a large pool of people applying for the vacancy of the board and that this moment will lead to those same people continuing to be informed, continuing to be involved, because we always need more minds looking at problems. One way to encourage people to stay involved is to give them the information needed to participate in a properly prepared manner. In that same case, the court stated, quote, a notice is proper only if it fairly and sufficiently apprises the public of the action proposed, making possible intelligent preparation for participating. End quote. In all the ways we can have intelligent preparation for the public participating, let's please make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. All right. Anyone else this evening? Okay. Getting right into business, we will start with the Board of Education financial reports. Casey, do you want to share your screen on this one?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Okay, so we'll start with the check register over $1,000. Was there, Caroline, you did send me a question in advance on this one, regarding the payment to Total Communications, Inc. In the amount of $25,506. I think you're questioning sort of what that is for. Is that an annual payment, subscription, service? And the answer is yes, that is the annual amount. Hi, Aaron. Aaron joined us. That is the annual amount that we pay for our Marikai access point licenses. And so that allows all of our wireless devices across the district to be able to access seamlessly the internet and transfer from one location in a building to another. And that is our annual cost for all of those access points across the 3 school buildings and TSO.
Okay. And is that inclusive of all the student devices, the Chromebooks, like all that? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, it's not for the Chromebooks themselves. It's just so that every single Chromebook, printer, teacher, laptop, every wireless device can access the internet. Okay. That's what those access points do, and there's a license for that in this model. Yeah, and that's what we have. So that is the annual fee for that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm happy to answer any other questions on the check register that there might be.
That was the same line item that jumped out at me too.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that you don't see every month, so that's why it stuck out. But it is annual, so you'll likely see it next year around this time.
Everything I saw is pretty much what we are doing. So.
Yeah, I didn't have anything else that stood out.
The only other thing is this typical that we're paying the town of Bethel for track and field use?
Yes, that's part of that is part of our rental fees that we have in athletics for I think it's an indoor track space that we use for some either meets or practices due to foul weather. I believe that's what that's for.
And is that a monthly fee? Same question, or
no? What's the amount? So I can just.
I think it's 5,000 even.
Okay.
That's what you're talking about, right, Aaron?
Yes.
Right there.
Yeah. No, that is not monthly. That's for the season.
Okay.
Yep.
And we've checked and just made sure we're utilizing that space.
Yeah, I mean, I can confirm with Mr. Baldwin, but yes, I can say confidently that yes, we do use it, but I will confirm with Mr. Baldwin. And if the answer is different, I will certainly communicate that out with the committee.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
And then my question about our medical director. So we pay him quarterly. Mm-hmm. So $12,000 a year. What is that inclusive of? Like, what do we get for $12,000 a year other than he's our medical director?
Stephen might be able to answer that more, but I know he is on call as a consult for us on different student needs that that do arise. I know that we do consult with him on time. It is more correlated related with special education needs, I think, from my experience time to time. And I do believe we are legally required to have a medical doctor on hand. Is that correct, Stephen? Correct me if I'm wrong.
No, we have to have one. I just didn't know what. But I know in the past we've tried to contact him, right, regarding some questions, and he never really got back to us with late start and stuff. So I was just wondering, is he a little bit more receptive now than he has been? Is he able to be contacted and he gets back in touch?
I can find out. I haven't had to deal with him. Maybe Stephen, you can answer that.
No, I would say the same. I have not had to deal with him, but I agree and concur that it's more either medical due to special education, nursing, or sometimes athletic. So we can check on that. I'm not sure about the responsive nature of the individual, so we can find out more about that.
Yeah, I was just curious because we were trying to contact him regarding Healthy Start, and we really couldn't get a hold of him. So I was just curious if anybody has. I mean, I know we need to have them. Every district does. It just...
Yeah. Interesting.
I would just be
Okay.
interested what we use him for. You know what I mean? Other than him being able to contact him.
Right. We'll look into that.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I'm good on the check register.
Do you want me to move on, Caroline?
Yes, sorry about that.
That's okay.
Let's move on.
Okay. All right. So that brings us to the financial report. We are continuing to track, as we have been the last several months, a budget surplus this year. At least half of that is due to savings that we were realizing in special education. Between the three accounts that we asked for additional funding at the end of last budget season, at the last budget process, we had asked for an additional, I think, $621,000 for special education, out of district tuition, transportation, and the corresponding excess cost grant revenue. We are expecting a net surplus in those three accounts. Above and beyond that, we will have salary savings due to, it's largely driven to the savings in administration from not filling the Director of Curriculum and Instruction position, which was vacated when Mrs. Farias took the assistant superintendent, first interim assistant superintendent, and then permanent assistant superintendent position. As well as the interim superintendent model that we've experienced for a large part of this year. We also have salary savings from some vacancies in the custodial and maintenance groups, as well as a shortage in the paraeducator contract due to a new contract being negotiated July 1. All of that will be covered with salary savings elsewhere. With a net savings of just under $270,000. We're anticipating a savings in our health insurance. When we build the budget, if we have any vacancies, in any positions at that time, I always do assume that when those positions are filled, that that employee will take our benefits. We do offer, the partnership, the state partnership plan is a great benefit package, and it really is, attractive to employees. And so I do always assume that the cost to the district, if one employee were to come on with family insurance, depending on the cost share, is anywhere from, $35,000 to $40,000 annual cost for one employee for a family benefit. And so you can see at that rate, right, to not account for any of those vacant positions to take insurance, that could be a real problem if it were to swing the other way. So fortunately, that broke in our favor this year. And so we do have some savings in our health insurance account. Professional services is continuing to be over budget. That's largely due to the shortfall in special education professional services in different areas. And additionally in legal fees, although last month's bill was significantly lower than every previous month. I think our total bill for last month was about $5,500. We don't have April's bill yet, so that will, give us more information. But we did do a budget transfer already into the legal expenses account earlier in the year. We did a $50,000 budget transfer. So I'm anticipating now that we may be needing an additional $10,000, but that really could change depending on how the final 3 months shake out. We do have custodial negotiations coming up, and so I know that there is some legwork being done by legal in that area. So I don't anticipate it to be quite as low as it was in March, but it shouldn't be what it was earlier in the year. Transportation, again, that savings is largely driven to the savings in out-of-district special education, which is upwards of $440,000. And then we have a slight budget shortfall in in-district transportation due to a continuance of a McKinney-Vento transportation situation that continued on from last year. Other purchased services, again, that shortfall is from out-of-district tuition for special education. And then we are running a bit of a net shortfall in supplies, and that's largely due to energy prices. We were over in oil because we had a very long, cold winter. And so we ran over budget there. We are over in electricity because we were supposed to have a return to our normal delivery rates at the start of this year, which we did not experience until about midway. So we did a budget transfer into electricity to account for a full year of where we were at in about November. Since January, oddly enough, coincidentally enough, the delivery rates have come down some. So I don't anticipate needing to use all of that budget transfer. So there's going to be a little bit of a savings from the adjusted budget in electricity. And that hopefully should carry over into next year as well. So overall, we are looking at a favorable budget variance of roughly $545,000 on the year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
I had.
That's a lot of money. Where's all that money go? How can we utilize that?
So later on the agenda, we do have there's some budget transfers that we'll be requesting, and we can dive into that a little bit more during that conversation. I think that would be a great place for that.
Yep. Quick question on the professional services for special education.
Yep.
Just help me understand, is that bringing skill sets into Brookfield for students, or is that us sending students out because it's not a tuition? What is that?
So those are essentially all in-district needs, and it varies widely depending on what that need is. But it's outside service providers providing services to our students that are not otherwise provided by our own faculty or staff here. It could be, I know we have had a large increase in testing, like different evaluations, educational evaluations. Those can be very costly. Like a psych eval can be upwards of $7,500, right? And so though that budget has been incrementally increasing since last year, I really started seeing it come up. It can be for when we had a shortage in our OT and PT specialists or speech pathologists, we've had to use outside services to fulfill those needs, because those are needs that are required by a student's IEP, that they need to be, to receive those services. And so we need to fulfill them. And if we don't have the staff in-house to do that, we do need to contract with outside services to provide it.
Is this something we anticipate going into the next budget cycle?
Yes, we did increase our this budget account, other professional services in special education for next year. We did.
And is that something, are there ideas on how to mitigate that long term?
I would, sorry, Stephen, I would maybe require Stephen to address that. I think the answer is yes, but you may be able to answer it with more.
Unique services that we can't manage in-house. So we do not have someone in-house who can do a neurological exam. Certain psychological exams we maybe can do, but other ones we can't. So sometimes those are outcomes of PPT decisions that we can't always control. And so unless we can find some patterns where, it would be wise to hire a neurologist or, another school psychologist to be able to perform or conduct some of these, it may not, there may not be a cost benefit because they're just so varied in what is being asked for these funds to be able to be appropriated for.
Okay, I understood. I'm just looking for, if there were other areas of professional development to help fill, skill gaps potentially. I don't know.
So one small example could be, the hope to going toward an occupational therapist versus a CODA. That to me is a little edge in on this type of funding, because we would have now 2 CODAs to be able to conduct the evaluations. Hopefully the one that we had previously maybe at times got over flooded with evaluations and couldn't handle them all. I don't know. Or the oversight of the CODA. But having 2 occupational therapists might help support that. If we will keep looking at ways to be able to staff accordingly, to reduce in areas that we can. And so hopefully in future years, maybe we can reduce in this area. I just don't have enough data yet on that to be able to say that now would be that time.
That's fair. Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Any other questions on the summary here? Okay. Next up, the teacher turnover update.
Yep, this one will be quick. There were no changes for second or third month in a row. No changes to what we were reporting last month and the month before. So we are on target. We have met that that target turnover of $200,000, and I think we are over by about $750. So we're in good shape there.
When's the deadline for retirement announcement?
Per their contract, in order to take full advantage of any sick time, payout that they may be entitled to at the end of the year, they need to give 45 days notice, which should be coming. I'm not sure if we're there yet, because we go so late in June now that it's unfortunately a lot later than it normally is.
Yeah, because normally would have heard by now, right?
Yes.
The announcements, the resignations happen. Sometimes we don't know until late August, right?
Yeah.
So those I get, but like, what's the teacher contractual obligation? Like, they really don't need to let us know. Like, if say they know in June that they're going somewhere else, they don't realistically have to let us know until when?
Well, they would have to give us 45 days notice if they want to be eligible to receive their sick time payout that they're entitled to. So I don't think if they're retiring, I've never had it be where a teacher would not give it. So it's 45 days notice.
I wasn't talking about retiring. So realistically, they could resign July 20th and they would still get their payout. 45 days, right?
Going into the next school year.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what I'm worried about. Like, we keep having late resignations for teachers into the following school year. So normally we'll see the retirements, but it's the ones that we find out right at our August, sometimes our September meeting, that they're not returning to Brookfield, that they found a job somewhere else. So I just didn't know if there was a particular deadline that they needed to let the district know in order to have the perks of whatever it is.
Well, the perks would be the 45-day notice. Other than that, there's they can let us know that in July or August.
If there's enough sick time to motivate that.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So the only other condition, and this is state law, not contractual, but because state law trumps contractual, it is probably in every teacher's contract too. If they tell us after August 1st, they are required to stay with us for the first 30 days of school. So we don't have to let them go. Now, that's still a very difficult scenario to be in, to try to hurry up to hire someone, to have them start not fresh with the kids. So it's not great at all, but no, literally they could tell us all the way up to, this last week of August, and all they're obligated to do is stay with us for 30 days.
30 days. And it's 30 days from the start of school,
Correct.
Stephen? Okay.
After August 1st, it's 30 days from the start of school.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks, Casey. The special ed out of district update.
Yes. So the only change here is, as you'll recall, last month I was reporting that we would possibly have an emerging need that would result in an additional out-of-district tuition cost, and that did come to fruition. And so that amount has been fully encumbered in the forecast numbers that we're talking about tonight. So you can see our student count went from 29 to 30 students that are currently outplaced, which is 2 fewer than we had in our budget. Although you see that we are still, even though it's 2 fewer students, we are still over budget in our tuition expenses because which indicates that the needs of this particular group of students is a little bit more complex than those that we had originally budgeted for. And so we're tracking right now favorable to budget in these three budget accounts, $294,203.
Say that one more time, that number. Sorry, Casey.
That's okay. $294,203.
And you're saying as a surplus, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. In special ed, okay. Does this incremental need that has come to fruition impact the budget for next year?
We are not sure at this point in time. It's not baked into the budget for next year because we didn't, we were not aware of it at the time we built the budget. So it's to be determined.
Okay. When do we think that would be determined?
So that would be through the PPT process, which I believe, I to be honest with you, that's a Bill question. Hopefully by the end of this year, but I'm not certain.
Okay.
But I will update, as we start looking at where, as we open next budget, in July, and we start looking at that, all of that will be fleshed out, and the committee and the board will be updated on where we stand with all of those numbers.
Okay. Are we going to keep this same running report and view for next fiscal year? I know that was like a new request for this year, correct?
Yes. And yes, it was a new request. And if the committee finds it helpful, I'm happy to continue reporting it out this way.
Okay.
It's really up to you guys.
I think so.
Okay, good.
Okay. Any other questions here?
No, I'm good. Thank you, Casey.
You're welcome.
All right. Thanks, Rob. Okay. We are going to move into new business, starting with the BHS boilers.
Yes. Okay, so this is an update that we provided at the finance subcommittee meeting last week, I think it was. And this was to update the committee, and the board was updated. Actually, yeah, the whole board was updated. So I don't have to recap everything. That's right.
It was at the facilities meeting last week, and then
the full board got the update
at the board meeting as well. Correct.
That's great. So thank you for that reminder, because I can share just the new information now that I have received.
Perfect.
And so Dan Caldwell has been, sourcing other solutions to this, and has reached out to a vendor, an HVAC vendor that we use, to get prices on just the cost of one steam boiler to replace at least that boiler number 3 that is offline and has not been used for several years. We will have a firm quote on that, hopefully by the end of this week, if not early next week. However, just in assessing the situation, looking at, what the hookup might look like, removal of that, I think they're cast iron boilers that are in that boiler room, and the access to it. The vendor that was on site looking at this does believe that the cost of one boiler install, steam boiler, would be comparable, if not slightly less, potentially, than the cost of a full season rental of that boiler. So the initial thought was, do we need to rent a boiler for a period of time for next year? And if we did need to, what would be the cost of the whole season? So we knew that cost was about $176,000, but did not include site monitoring and some other hookups that would have been required. So if you figure all in, probably it would have been between $200,000 and $220,000 for a boiler rental for the season. If the cost to purchase a boiler is even that same price, I think it would behoove the board to really consider moving in that direction, because we do know that it will likely be needed for this heating season and most likely the season after as well, depending on the outcome of the HVAC evaluation and assessment that we have underway on the system. So the other good piece of news to that was, the technology has changed quite a bit since those boilers that we have in the building. And so there is a potential that if we were to purchase a steam boiler, in today's technological advancements, it's possible that we could convert that boiler into like a hot water boiler or some other type of system, if we are to move in that direction. If you recall, we do have an RFP, and I got the feedback from the NBC last week, and our purchasing agent is working on putting all of that into his format to release hopefully this week. We have an RFP to go out to assess the entire HVAC system. That's the heating and cooling and fresh air system in the high school, and give us options for upgrading that system. Because while, yes, the boilers are the issue today, they're one of the issues. The larger issue is having a heating system that provides comfort, right? Consistently across the building, so that it's consistent temperatures and humidity levels and all of that stuff, which we're finding is very problematic with the steam system that we have today. And so that's the overall picture. But short term, if we can purchase a boiler that can get us, at least heat in the same consistency, which is an inconsistent manner, but at least it would be, reliable for the next 1 or 2 heating seasons, that would be a win. So I anticipate having a good number on that, hopefully by Friday. And we may be able to bring, a formal presentation and request to the board, likely probably to the facilities committee first, and then to the full board for consideration in the very short term. Clearly, if this is something that, we end up ultimately recommending that we move forward with, we do want to move fast because it is a large project. Even getting that boiler out of there, I just picturing it in my head. I don't know how that's going to work, but I know the professionals will do it. Yeah.
It's something that we would ideally execute before school is in session again.
Absolutely. I mean, we would, yeah, that would be a critical, I think, piece to it.
Yes. So can I put in here that an update will be given at the 5/20 board meeting? What do we think?
As long as I have the information I need on Friday or Monday at the latest. So, yeah. If there's more solid information than I have tonight, absolutely. I mean, we want to get this into the board's, decision-making hands as quickly as possible. So that is absolutely our goal.
So I think the goal would be that we would try to do that. And if for some reason we don't have it, then we'll just share that. But
right.
The goal would be for us to be able to provide it on that night, so that way we can move it forward the way we need to the Board of Selectmen and then the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
And just a quick note on this topic, I did reach out to Brian Hoffman on the Board of Finance, just to give him a heads up that these discussions were happening. We were pricing this out. He requested to price out an actual asset replacement, right? It would be in our better interest, to your point, Casey, if we really found a more permanent solution, especially when it sounds like that could potentially be converted to our long-term solution. Maybe not. So that was his request. And then Stephen, I did mention to Brian that this would likely be just up to in the discussion at the Board of Finance meeting tomorrow evening, just to inform the Board of Finance that this is happening. So.
Oh, that sounds good. Thank you.
Yep.
Just a point of clarification, if you don't mind. So the request, I'm trying to understand the request from Brian to look into something that's more permanent.
So when I mentioned to Brian that we had looked first into a rental solution for the
Correct,
heating
yeah.
season. And his request was, are we also quoting a more permanent replacement solution? And I said, yes, I think Casey and the team are looking at that, replacing one boiler. And then I said, we have a much larger project. And so I think that's probably maybe a point you want to clarify with the whole Board of Finance as well, maybe tomorrow evening.
Excellent. That sounds great. Thank you for that clarification.
Yep. Okay. Anything else on this topic?
Nothing else to report at this time.
Okay. And so next up, end of year budget transfers, please.
Absolutely. All right, I will share my screen again. Okay. So as you'll see, we do this about quarterly. This was the budget transfers from July. We did some in October, again in March. And now we're at the end of the year, and we have an additional list of budget requests or budget transfer requests to true up some accounts that are, running over budget, and truing them up with some surplus or some savings that we have in other accounts. And so you'll see the transfers in of $246,114. That's going to, the items that we have been talking about, which are other professional services for special education, pupil transportation, the heating oil, natural gas was another one that was up, and garbage and recycling. For some reason, that's a little bit short this year. So those would be trued up with savings in all of these other accounts. I had mentioned health insurance. We did get additional preschool attendance this year, more numbers in that program than we anticipated. So we have additional revenue there. Electricity, that is transferring out, but as you recall, we already did a $50,000 transfer into that account, so I'm pulling some of that back. Athletic transportation, I think will be good there. Disability insurance, pension contribution, VOAG tuition, that's all paid. A couple other smaller accounts. So you'll see that the transfers in equals transfers out, and we are still staying within our approved budget appropriation of $55,439,392. So I would ask that the board approve these budget transfers at the next board meeting. Is there any questions on that section?
Now I just have questions on the one-time purchase requests.
All right, so we will move on over there. So, okay, so we're truing up the budget shortfalls that we have with savings in other areas. We still have salary savings, as I talked about in the financial report. The net savings for all of our salary accounts, including overtime, administrator salaries, para-educator, shortfall on salaries, leaves and vacancy savings, is about just under $270,000. So if you take our $270-ish thousand, and about the 291 in the special education out of district tuition, transportation, excess cost grant. That gets you just right around what our anticipated total surplus is running on the year. So in thinking about that, that's our surplus. That's, what is not, planned on being used the way it was planned when we developed the budget last October. And looking forward and looking at the needs of the district, as you recall, there was that request list that came through from all of the buildings when we were developing the budget this year. There was a lot of one-time purchase requests that came through in that operating that didn't even make it to that 6% budget request, the superintendent request of the 6%. So all of these items were cut. And so having these savings that we have in our budget, and have it sort of goes to your question, Robert, which is there a way that we can use these monies for the district and for education as the funds were approved? The answer is, if we were to use some of that surplus that we have, and again, sort of ring fencing this special education balance, because that was, funding that was approved at the end of the budget process last year by the Board of Finance. It was injected into our budget for a very specific need because we came to them with, very specific accounting of where those funds would be going for student needs. I would suggest that in good faith, and we would just return that because it was not used for that purpose. We still have other needs that could be funded through this additional savings. And so this is the list that we're talking with Stephen, looking at what the buildings had requested that were automatically, sort of not even really brought forth in the budget process this year. This is the list that we think would make a big difference to each building, would go a long way. And these are one-time purchases that we wouldn't necessarily, none of them would be carried over into next year's budget as a carry through, because again, these are one-time purchases that could be funded with the funds that we are realizing some savings in some other areas in our account this year that could be purchased in this year's budget. And so those items, if you want to just we can just go through. At the high school, they had requested a replacement of the auditorium curtains and an upgrade of the auditorium sound system. So this would benefit, the theaters, the theater and arts department heavily. The current auditorium, and they're very expensive. I know that's a large number for curtains, but they are, how large they are, and they're multi-layered, and they all have to be flame retardant, and there's very high code standards that they have to fall under. So that raises that price quite a bit. A handicap art sink was
quick question on that. So since that's such a large dollar amount, is there any rules around like depreciation and that being an asset or not? Just considered an expense.
Marcia's chiming in. I knew she would.
It is an asset at $65,000, but with respect to government accounting, it would still go through the expenses. It's not like in a business where all of a sudden, it's an asset, we don't debit expense.
Right.
We still debit expense. With respect to any of this, if this is what is done, my recommendation would be that we take this, we ask the boards of education, selectmen of finance for a budget transfer to move it to a different line out of education and call it transfer to capital non-recurring. And because the general fund stops at June 30th and there may be some planning, you may not get it all encumbered. That way it would carry forward for a longer period of 3 years or more.
Okay. Thank you.
You're talking about just the curtains, or you're talking about all of these items?
I would say like the playscape, going out to bid. It's already May. We may not, and there may be, once you get the basic playscape, there may be other things, but that way we're not up against a time deadline. That it would all be this. It wouldn't be any different to other than it would go through an approval process versus being spent out of yours, which I'm sure you would still talk to the other boards. But to me, from an accounting point of view, that gives you some breathing room.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the playscape is probably the one item that I would absolutely agree with you on, because I think that probably will take some time. I think the other items, actually, we have quotes on most other things that we could probably move pretty quickly with. But again, I want to be very, very clear. We wouldn't move on these until we are into June and we know, like, you know, beyond a shadow of a doubt almost. I mean, you can say June 15th, I don't know, but like where we're going to land, right? Like I wouldn't, you know, it wouldn't be a recommendation that we do this tomorrow. We would wait until we are very sure and solid on where we would land, because as you can see, it doesn't spend down all of the salary savings that we have. It would leave this $46,000 remaining surplus, which you can see in this next category. I've added to the anticipated special ed balance. And so the total that would be anticipated to be returned to the town would be this $337,000. I think importantly, it's, you know, I think it's important to also keep in mind the conversation we just had about the boiler at the high school, right? And that we would be going and asking for that, you know, funding for that need outside of our budget. And so this also kind of keeps in mind that, you know, we're returning those funds, you know, and we'll have to be requesting likely a fix for that, that heat situation at the high school as well. And at this $337,000 return to the town, that should be more than enough, hopefully, to cover a boiler replacement or, you know, a rental, should that be the only option to go with. So any questions there?
I mean, I just have a question because it's the first time we're seeing it, right? These are items that didn't make it to the cut, but we just cut a ton of stuff in the budget next year that made it to the cut. So I want to know why these are being prioritized over supplies for our kids, over uniforms that are falling apart at the high school. I just think, you know, and what is this? A playscape, $100,000 playscape. And look, I walked CLES, but I think the onus is the administration picked the playscape that's there. I think $100,000 is a lot of money to be dumping into a playground when we just cut everywhere else and it made it to that budget. So I'm really disappointed that this hasn't been a board discussion. I'm really disappointed that it didn't get brought to the board, and this stuff never even made it to the budget. And we just cut a ton of stuff in the budget.
So I can speak to what was cut from the budget and why those are not items proposed on this list necessarily. So the bulk of the savings from the budget cuts, going from the 6 to the 396, a lot of that is salaries. So it was the administrative position, which was $186,000, I believe. It was 2 sections at CLES. It's the library media specialist at BHS. There's a lot of salaries, over $500,000 in salaries that make up the budget cuts. So those wouldn't be funded out of this year's budget and save a position for next year. So that's the salaries portion. Another large area that was cut in next year's budget was a lot of professional development. It was field, right? The professional development for next year, that was cut significantly in all 3 buildings, the curriculum writing, things like that. Those are all also items that are not like one-time purchases. They would have to happen next year because that's when the PD would happen. And so the reason why these things made it on this list is because they're one-time purchases that could happen prior to June 30th. That would also impact the buildings for years to come. And so that's sort of where that goes. The buildings themselves and all the different departments in the buildings they still have a lot of supply money left in this year. And so they are trying to see, you know, make some decisions on what was cut from next year's budget that maybe if they've gone this far in the year without purchasing what they had planned that money's for, is it better spent to maybe purchase some of those library kits for the classrooms that were cut for last year? So they still have some funding available in this year's budget that they intend to spend. That is also, again, new, at least in the last several years, because they've never been able to fully expend all of their supply monies. So this is a little bit new for them. When I go to them and say, no, you can use all of that money. You are, I don't need it. And they're so good, because they'll come and say, if you need $5,000 to cover anything, I don't have to spend the rest of this. And for me to be able to say, no, please spend it on what you need for your building, is a shift. And so, so I'm not as concerned about the supplies in the buildings, and as I would have been, had they spent all of their supply money already this year. I don't know if that helps.
Not really.
Well, Casey, I definitely think you guys are filling a need, because I believe from what I was told, those curtains are pretty bad, and the arts department definitely deserves it for sure. So and I understand the whole one-time purchase thing. I get that. So that's thank you for that.
Sure.
Caroline, can you give us like the breakdown of what we cut, right, at the last meeting when it was handed to us, and then put this together so it can be looked at side by side when we have to talk about this at the next meeting? I'm not saying they don't need stage curtains, but I have a really hard time looking at this like we're going to prioritize tumbling mats over, I don't even know what we just cut. That could be a potential one time. I've never seen it like this. And I just think it's kind of alarming.
Well, I think we haven't had the opportunity to really do this, right, in previous fiscal years either, in fairness.
That's correct.
Right? Where we were landing, with an potential opportunity.
And I get that. And I get that we have to reinvest it. But I find it surprising that all this stuff made it on here and it didn't make it in the initial cut when we cut stuff that could be one-time recurring. So I'm just interested in seeing what we did cut, as opposed to why this is here and those weren't prioritized. And then if somebody can explain to me, I know that we put a BHS sound system in not that long ago, and I know that they've been having problems with it. So I'm hoping that they found a new vendor from the last time that we did this. How long ago was that? And $11,000 to fix problems that potentially were, are we buying new gear again? Are we upgrading what was recently upgraded? Like, what does that look like?
That's a fair question.
Yeah, I can get an answer on that.
And I would like to see, personally, a little bit more of a business case, not like a huge endeavor around the playscape investment, right? Were there like formal findings? I'm assuming there's not safety concerns in particular, because those would be addressed. But that to me obviously is a really significant investment. Again, maybe it's rightfully so, but would just like to understand the drive.
It's for our kids, Caroline. It's all for the kids. It's a great investment for the kids. What more do you need?
Caroline, I would suggest going to look at the school, because I was pretty alarmed when I did walk the school and see how not equipped it is for children at recess.
Oh, I know. My kids complain about it personally.
So, like I said, I really am surprised, but it is a significant investment, and the school hasn't even been open that long.
Again, I agree. I want to invest. I hear the complaints in my home, but I think to make that decision, there just needs to be a little bit of background data and information, I think, around that one. Sure.
Yeah, and I'd love to know what the music equipment we're funding at WMS. We're not funding any of it. Cut it all. Yes. So is it like can the buildings use stuff? How are we being equitable in all our schools?
Yeah. So the music equipment at WMS, that's for an oboe that they had requested in the priority list. And I do recall that the board, you guys had asked for like what was cut that didn't even make it in the budget. And I do remember you guys asking, I think it was the full board that had asked to see that. So you will find these in that list of all those things that never made the 6%. I think everything, the CLES Playscape was a smaller number at the time. I believe that there is a playground committee at CLES that's sort of investigating and researching what the best equipment might be. And so based on that, I think the 20,000 was a little bit of wishful thinking. And that's why that number is larger. I believe everything else you would see in that list of requests that didn't make the 6%. The tumbling mats at Wisconsin, those were discarded. Those were very, very old. They were discarded over the summer, were not replaced, and so that's why they were in the request from Wisconsin.
Is it an appropriate request to have the playground committee come and present at a board meeting for this?
Not at all.
Okay.
So not at all. I think they'd be happy to do that. And I guess I'd want to know too, for my kind of communication back to them, could you elaborate a little more on what it is your kind of the ask is for that and the information you were sharing?
I want to understand the specifics of what are the found deficiencies in it, and what are we going to invest in to, resolve those.
So they pretty much put two of the same exact playscapes in an area for a kindergarten to second grade. They just mirrored that same one and they slapped a tag on it and called it like 7 to 12-year-olds. So it's supposed to be third graders to fifth grade, but it's the same exact playscape. So it's just developmentally not appropriate. And it has nothing to develop any type of upper body strength or even usability. The slide, like kids sit on the slide and their feet are already hitting the ground. It's just tiny. So we would leave that there. And in an open spot, we would be able to put a brand new one that is age appropriate and meets all the developmental needs of the students.
Okay.
It's also not waiting around for, I think they also needed to correct it, right? The contractors, that's pretty much an error on their end. So we're, investing in playtime that, we should have more time of. I know we heard that at public comment once. I'm a big fan of that as well, more recess time, but that's not for this committee. So I won't say that. I just wanted to throw that out there, but yes. Like investment to help for the kids.
Actually, that's a good question, Rob. Do we know if there's any outstanding requests or litigation around this with the contractor? I know
I know there's a lot going on. I really don't know where exactly it's at. I truly don't. I couldn't answer that. I'm not sure.
Just a question, Casey, maybe or you could.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything on the playground. I don't think there's any, pending or outstanding claims on the playground situation. Yeah.
The only thing specific that I remember sitting at Municipal Building that had anything to do with it is something under the rubber, like the mulch, right? Yes. That's an issue. But as far as the playground equipment that was selected and placed at that school, it was placed by us. It wasn't placed, Brookfield Public Schools decided on what was going there. Not our contractor, not our architect.
I apologize. I misspoke then. Either way, we're fixing a mistake that's in the past that we're trying to move forward. I thought it was a mistake. I apologize. I do remember the emails now. Yes. So anyway, I do remember that.
Yeah. And that, what you're referring to with the mulch, you're right, Aaron. And that was, I believe that was corrected over April break where there was a underlayment that they were supposed to put down first so that it contains the mulch in the area that it's supposed to be in. And I believe that was addressed over spring break.
Yeah, I would actually just question the whole rubber area too. I mean, look, it was the first time I went there, but the rubber mat that's there doesn't even seem like it's adhered to the ground or anything properly. It's almost like a trampoline walking all around it. So next time I see the guys from Municipal Building, I'll ask, but it's bizarre how any of that happened at that school. I don't know.
Okay, then maybe I can refine my request to understand like what the final proposal would be for the investment, right? It sounds like we're pretty clear on the deficiency. That's fine. But I would definitely like to understand the details of the proposal, to your point, Stephen, and how they would now meet the developmental needs.
I think we would be happy to bring that to the board.
Yeah, and I would love to know where they can go, right? So I was pretty surprised when I went how small the space is and how it's laid out. There's like 2 broken things that I'm assuming will get fixed, right? There was caution tape on them.
Mhm.
But, you know, where would they actually go? Because the playground area is tight up against the school unless it went, you know, towards the back by the basketball courts or in between the 2 playgrounds. I just was really surprised. I don't even know where they would put anything else.
Yeah, there are areas over where you were referring to before, the rubber mulch areas, where there currently is a K-2 and then a 3-5 supposedly playscape now. There's an area right in between those where it could go and an area right after that. So it would be in that same vicinity as the others. Yeah, so that would be the location. It wouldn't be near the basketball courts.
Okay. Yeah, I was just surprised. I mean, it's a pretty small area for a school that big and how many kids are out there at recess. So it was
I think the bigger concern for me is the amount of, or the lack thereof, of grass field play area in the back there. There's really none.
well, hopefully the front they can start utilizing. I don't know.
I just
It's
worry
all
about
parking
cars.
lot.
I
That's
know. The whole parking lot right there. I don't love that, but yes.
Okay, so is the plan to bring a few more details to the board meeting next week for further discussion around this?
Yes, that would be the hope. And I'm not sure that the committee will have anything on the playscape just yet for Wednesday night.
No, that's fair. No, I didn't.
Okay. Yeah.
Apologies. Not. I guess we don't need it specifically for next
Gotcha.
Wednesday's meeting. But I think to review this with the rest of the board members, compared
Yes.
to Aaron, what you were asking around areas in which didn't make the budget cut. How are we looking at this? And then I think ultimately, maybe for the June timeframe, Stephen, we could have a more detailed proposal for the playscape or playscape.
So yes and yes to both. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes for this Wednesday, coming Wednesday, or next Wednesday, and yes to June for more details around the playscape.
Okay.
So I think for next Wednesday's board meeting, I will likely just put these budget transfers on. If the committee approves, of moving forward with the budget transfers, I think everything in this column over here, we can sort of hold as conversations, with the board. And we do have 2 more full board meetings before the end of the year. It's not something that we would move on before, the middle of June anyway. So there's no rush in that. There's no, there's no urgency on that at all.
Okay. I mean, I would recommend that we do have we don't need to make a motion or take a vote on anything, but I would like to inform the board. I guess this would the finance committee be on the agenda, Rob, for next week's board meeting? Likely, correct?
Yeah, it should be for sure. I would believe so, right, Stephen? We have time for this meeting. I believe makes the next one.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So these documents will be with the packet anyway, Aaron. So, excuse me, Caroline. So they'll be in there.
So I think it would be good, Casey, to inform the rest of the board members kind of the potential thought process, right, around allocation of the surplus. and strategy.
Yep.
That way maybe some of the questions can, come out earlier rather than later when we're looking to really potentially execute quickly, towards the end of the fiscal year on some of these.
Yeah, I think we would probably, if the committee, and then if the committee ends up being in support of moving on some of these one-time purchases, and then the board were to decide, I think the beginning of June is the last regular Board of Ed meeting.
Right.
So we would probably look for that approval at that meeting. But you could have language in that motion that says, contingent upon funds being available, right? Like to a certain level. So you could authorize the board wouldn't have to reconvene as long as you would be comfortable with us moving forward, as proposed. But
Yep.
there's still.
I'm sorry, Casey, were you looking to make the motion, for us to make the motion tonight to support these transfers?
The budget transfers, those won't change. But the one-time purchases and the.
I'm sorry. That's what I meant. The one-time purchase.
Yes.
My apologies.
No, not this evening.
Yeah, not this evening.
Copy that. Okay, I just misunderstood. Thank you.
That's okay.
And more for discussion and review, I think.
Yes.
Purposes. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions here? Okay. Going back to the agenda, next up is unfinished business. I did not have anything under that for this evening. And then moving to miscellaneous, I just put a couple of notes in here to remind myself. I just wanted to ask about the requested funding for the maintenance vehicle that we had voted on.
Yeah, so we did send that request off to the Board of Selectmen, and I do believe that they approved that funding request at their last meeting. So it is now going to the Board of Finance, and hopefully they're taking that up at their meeting tomorrow night.
Yes, it's on the agenda.
Perfect.
Okay.
And I've been in contact with Ingersoll. They're aware of the timing and the process, and they were happy to hold the vehicle. I've been keeping them informed of the process along the way. So hopefully I will be able to let them know, hopefully good news on Thursday morning.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
And the only other one is a question. I may not put any notes around this, but we voted and approved the increase in the teacher substitute daily rates. Are we looking at tracking that impact in the district? And is it something we could report out? I don't know. We're coming to the close of the school year, so it might be hard to report any impact in the last 6 weeks here. But
yeah, so we do work closely with ESS, our sort of our service provider for substitutes, where this pay rate increase has gone to, and they provide us data with fill rates that can be by building, could be by week, by month. So we can absolutely ask for them, to do a comparison of before and after, to see if we have had any, uptick in our fill rates. That's, I think, primarily where we would hope to see an impact, that our fill rate would increase. And again, it is late in the school year, so people's habits and schedules may not change this late in the year to get those substitutes in. But certainly we would have a good sense of that next year, going into the fall, to see what our fill rates are, and to see if we've been able to fill all of our building-based substitute positions that we have open, particularly at CLES.
okay.
Yeah, and usually times this time of year, right? Our para subs, like we usually have a ton of college kids from, Brookfield that end up being para subs. So I know they're home now. So I would assume the para subs will be filled momentarily.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, concerns under miscellaneous discussion?
I had one. I was just wondering and wanted to throw it out to the group for consideration. It, now that I've been to a few of the meetings between finance and facilities, there appear to be a lot of commonalities among the discussions. Obviously, finance has a little heavier, position with the numbers, but generally they're tied to facilities mostly, and vice versa. I wondered if there would be any thought or consideration for potentially combining the two and having a business and operations committee that would, kind of manage the two. It seems like there's a lot of repetitiveness sometimes in both of them and or reiterating, similar things. I just wonder if there's any credence to that and if it's something that we wanted to consider, talk about, possibly investigate. So yeah, just throwing it out there.
Caroline, you could probably speak well for that since you're on both committees.
I
You
will
might have some thoughts.
it is fair to say that there is a good amount of information kind of shared in both forums, sitting on both committees, which I enjoy both committees. So I'll just say that. I'm all. Robin, you got an
I just wanted to say, my apologies about that. I was making a turn also. I just wanted to say that I thought it was a great idea regarding that in regards to efficiency and just being more efficient from that aspect. Sorry about that.
No worries, Rob. Yeah, again, in the guise of a more streamlined, focused committee, I do like the idea because both really fall under your purview, Casey, right? The facilities and the finance. And a lot of times there are questions that are kind of a combination of both areas. I guess maybe I would ask, what could we look at, like what a proposed agenda could look like for a combination of those?
Well, and you also are going to have members not serve because you can't have more than 3 because you can't have a quorum.
Right.
We would have to, look at that or think about that. Maybe Robert would be a ex officio member opposed to a standing member. So then if you were to combine them both, I think that would work. Just a quick glance or thought of what membership would look like. So that's an option. I know I'm kind of saying that about Robert while he's on the call, so I don't know if he would agree or disagree with me, but I'm throwing that out there on his behalf anyway. So he can chime in on that one. But, okay, we got a thumbs up on that. So, but just a thought. But yes, you're right. We would have to consider all that, Aaron, definitely.
Yeah, and I think we also will have a new member too. So, I don't know where they would be serving.
Yeah, I know from my perspective too, there is a lot of overlap with what I share out at facilities and finance. And sometimes I'm like, if there's a recommendation to move forward, I have to pause and think, well, I shared it at both committees. What committee should I ask for the recommendation to go forward with it? Because there is so much overlap on that. So a business and operations focused committee, I think would also, a lot of times there's some updates on food service, right? That is both a financial and capital situation, right? Like the funding is the cafeteria fund. So that would be reported out in finance, but there's, facility upgrades that we're doing at the high school. So we would want to talk about that at facilities. So I would envision that there could be some efficiency savings there. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. I can come up with like a proposed draft agenda to see what that might look like. It's a good idea.
Okay. Noted. All right. Anything else from the group? Going once, going twice. All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. We will adjourn at 7:17 p.m.
Thank you all.
Have a great night, everyone.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.